The observation deck hummed with activity as Dr. Kellen adjusted his monitoring equipment for the third time that hour. Through the reinforced transparent steel window, the Ravith paced in its massive enclosure, each footfall creating small vibrations that traveled through the station's superstructure. The creature hadn't eaten in 23 cycles, and its agitation grew with each passing hour. Kellen's foraying stalks twitched nervously as he reviewed the biometric data scrolling across his screen. The virulent scientist had spent 5 years studying apex predators across the galaxy, but nothing compared to the Ravith. Standing 4 meters at the shoulder, covered in overlapping crystalline plates that could deflect plasma fire, with claws that could shear through reinforced steel, it represented the pinnacle of predatory evolution. The containment field is holding, but barely, his assistant Mira reported, her antennae drooping with concern. If it breaches, we lose the entire research wing. Minimum 40 casualties. Administrator Preth entered the observation deck, his bulk filling the doorway. The Corthan official exuded authority through every one of his 6 limbs as he surveyed the situation. Options, Dr. Kellen. We need to feed it immediately. The hunger is driving aggressive behavior beyond normal parameters. Kellen pulled up feeding records. Standard protocol requires livestock from approved sources, but our supply transport was delayed by solar activity. It won't arrive for another 6 cycles. Unacceptable. Preth's voice carried the weight of someone accustomed to instant solutions. The Council invested substantial resources in this facility. We cannot risk losing the specimen or the research. Mira interrupted, her voice hesitant. Sir, the human vessel that crashed 3 cycles ago. The survivors are still in quarantine Bay 7. Kellen felt his blood chilled despite his warm-blooded physiology. No, absolutely not. They're sapient beings under Council protection. Preth's primary eyes fixed on the scientist, while his secondary eyes continued monitoring the Ravith. The humans are from a Class 3 planet. Low gravity, comfortable climate, no significant predators. Their physiological assessments show them as remarkably fragile by galactic standards. He paused, manipulating a datapad. They have thin skin, no natural armor, no venom, no defensive capabilities. One of their young would be appropriate size for the Ravith's needs. Their people, Kellen protested, his voice rising. Sentient, thinking beings with families and rights. And what of the 40 researchers on this station? Do their rights matter less? Preth moved closer to the window, watching the Ravith slam against the containment field. The humans have several juveniles in their group. One child, humanely sedated and unaware, prevents a catastrophe that could kill dozens and destroy years of research. The mathematics are simple. Kellen wanted to argue further, but the cold logic of species survival overrode his personal ethics. He had reviewed the human medical files himself. They came from Earth, a planet with gravity barely above standard, comfortable temperatures, and abundant resources. Their evolution showed no significant predatory pressure. They were intelligent, certainly, but physically they appeared almost defenseless. The parents? He asked quietly, already knowing he had lost the argument. The female is in critical condition with internal injuries. The male is sedated following emergency surgery. Neither will know until after the fact. Preth turned from the window. Choose the smallest one. Make it quick and painless. That is the kindness we can offer. 2 hours later, Kellen stood in quarantine Bay 7, looking at 6 humans in various states of medical treatment. The children huddled together on one of the beds, clearly frightened but trying to be brave. His translator picked up their soft conversations, words of comfort and reassurance that seemed too mature for their small frames. The littlest one sat slightly apart from the others. According to the medical file, her name was Norah Reeves, age 6 standard years. She had brown hair pulled back in what humans called a ponytail, and wide eyes that held both fear and curiosity. She was small even by human standards, barely reaching 1 meter in height. Hello, Kellen said softly, his translator converting his words to English. My name is Dr. Kellen. I need to give you some medicine to help you sleep. You've been through something scary, and rest will help." Norah looked up at him, studying his alien features without the revulsion he sometimes encountered. "Will it hurt?" "Not at all. Just a small injection. Then you'll have nice dreams." The lie tasted bitter in his mouth. "Okay." She held out her arm with a trust that made Kellen's conscience scream in protest. The sedative took effect quickly. Kellen caught her as she slumped, her small body weighing almost nothing in his arms. He carried her through the sterile corridors of the station, each step feeling like a march toward damnation. The feeding chamber adjoined the main enclosure. Mira had prepared the space, removing any equipment or sharp objects that might cause unnecessary suffering. The plan was simple: place the child in the chamber, open the connecting door, and allow nature to take its course. The Ravith would feed, the crisis would end, and they would all carry the weight of what they had done. Kellen laid Norah on the smooth floor of the chamber. She looked even smaller in the vast space, her chest rising and falling with steady breaths. He touched her forehead once, a gesture of apology and farewell, then retreated to the control room. "May the cosmos forgive us," he whispered as Preth activated the door mechanism. The massive barrier began to rise with a grinding sound that seemed to echo the scientist's guilt. Through the monitors, they watched the Ravith's head swing toward the opening. Its nostrils flared, catching the scent of fresh prey. The creature moved with terrifying grace toward the chamber, toward the sleeping human child who had no idea she was about to become a meal. The chemical haze lifted from Norah's mind faster than Kellen's medical calculations predicted. Her eyes opened, pupils contracting against the bright lights of the chamber. For several heartbeats, she remained still, her brain processing the unfamiliar environment. Then she sat up, movements sharp and controlled despite her recent sedation. Kellen watched the monitors intently, noting her remarkable recovery speed. The sedative should have kept her unconscious for another hour minimum. Human metabolism, he realized, operated on different principles than expected. Norah stood on unsteady legs, turning in a slow circle to survey her surroundings. The chamber was 15 meters across, with smooth walls rising 4 meters to the ceiling. The open doorway to the main enclosure yawned like a dark mouth on the far side. She couldn't see the Ravith yet, but Kellen knew it was coming. The creature moved with deliberate patience when hunting, savoring the approach. "She's awake," Mira stated the obvious, her voice tight with stress. "Should we abort?" Preth shook his head. "The Ravith has already detected her. Opening the containment field now would cause it to attack us instead. We proceed." The massive predator appeared in the doorway, and Norah went completely still. Kellen had seen this response before in prey species. The freeze reaction, that moment when the brain confronted something so dangerous that movement felt impossible. But as he studied Norah's biometrics, he noticed something odd. Her heart rate had spiked, yes, but it was already beginning to regulate. Her breathing remained controlled rather than panicked. The Ravith stepped fully into the chamber, its crystalline armor catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. It stood 3 times Norah's height, a mountain of muscle and natural weaponry that had never met prey capable of resistance. Its mouth opened slightly, revealing rows of teeth designed to shear through bone that Norah's eyes tracked the creature's movements with focused intensity. She took a small step backward, then another, moving toward the wall without turning her back on the threat. Smart, Kellen thought. Instinctive threat assessment. The Ravith charged. The movement was explosive, 0 to full speed in less than a second. Most prey species simply collapsed at this point, their nervous systems overwhelmed by terror. But Norah moved. She threw herself sideways with speed that seemed impossible for her size, rolling across the floor and coming up running. The Ravith's claws struck the wall where she had been standing, gouging deep scratches in the reinforced material. "By the ancestors," Mira breathed. "Did you see that reaction time?" Kellen was already pulling up comparative data. Human reflexes were supposed to be average at best, but Norah had moved with predatory precision. The Ravith wheeled around, confused by prey that refused to behave correctly. It charged again, and again Norah evaded, this time ducking under a swipe that would have decapitated most creatures. She was making sounds now, high-pitched and loud. Not screams of terror, but something else. The translator struggled to process them. Go away. Leave me alone. Help. But beneath the words was something primal. The volume itself was a weapon, sharp and piercing in the enclosed space. The Ravitha's ears flattened against its skull. Norah grabbed a piece of loose debris from the floor, a fist-sized chunk of metal that had been used as enrichment for the Ravitha's environment. Without hesitation, she hurled it at the creature's face. Her throw was wild and uncoordinated, but the intent was clear. She was fighting back. The metal bounced off the Ravitha's armor harmlessly, but the creature stopped. In all its years of captivity, through hundreds of feedings, nothing had ever attacked it. Prey ran or froze or died. They did not throw objects. They did not fight. This is wrong, Kellen said suddenly. Everything about this is wrong. That child should be dead already. Preth remained focused on the monitors. Fascinating. The human is exhibiting combat responses entirely inappropriate for a prey species from a low-threat environment. Norah had backed into a corner now, which should have been a fatal mistake. The Ravith approached more cautiously, its predatory instincts thrown off by the unusual behavior. When it lunged, Norah did something that made Kellen's blood freeze. She lunged back, screaming at full volume and waving her arms to make herself look bigger. The Ravith actually retreated a step. Impossible, Mira whispered. But it had happened. The apex predator, lord of its domain, undefeated in countless hunts, had backed away from a 6-year-old human child. The confusion in its body language was evident to anyone who understood predator behavior. Norah was breathing hard now, her small chest heaving. Tears streaked her face, and her voice cracked as she continued yelling at the creature. But she held her ground. She had found a broken piece of equipment in the corner, a jagged shard of metal about 30 centimeters long, and she gripped it like a weapon. Where did she learn to do that? Mira asked. Children aren't supposed to have survival training. Kellen was rapidly searching through Earth's database, his horror growing with each file he opened. Their planet. Look at their planet. We classified it as Class 3, comfortable and safe. But the actual designation shows Class 2. That means... He felt his voice trail off as the implications crashed down on him. That means what? Preth demanded. That means Earth is a death world. Active tectonic zones, extreme weather systems, gravity at 1.9 standard. And the predators. Kellen pulled up images that made his skin crawl. Their apex predators average 2 to 3 times the mass of adult humans. The humans evolve alongside them. They had to develop endurance, intelligence, and aggression just to survive childhood. In the chamber, Norah had started moving again, not away from the Ravith but along the wall, maintaining distance while clearly searching for something. Her eyes scanned the environment with purpose. She was problem-solving under pressure, adapting to a situation that should have been beyond her capacity to handle. The Ravith charged again, but this time Norah was ready. She had positioned herself near a support column, and when the creature came at her, she dodged behind it. The Ravitha's momentum carried it past, and Norah raked her metal shard across its rear leg as it passed, targeting the gap between armor plates. The creature roared in pain and surprise. Blood, black and viscous, dripped from the wound. She wounded it, Preth said, his voice carrying a note of disbelief. A human child wounded the Ravith. Kellen made his decision. We're extracting her. Now, before this becomes a complete catastrophe. No, Preth said firmly. We observe. This is unprecedented data. This is murder, Kellen shot back. We threw a child to a monster because we underestimated her species. I won't watch her die for research. The two locked eyes while on the monitors. Norah continued her desperate dance of survival, and the Ravith learned what it meant to face prey from a world that created survivors. For hours passed in the observation room, each minute stretching into an eternity. Kellen's pleas for extraction had been overruled by Preth and 2 other senior administrators who had arrived to witness the unprecedented situation. The room now held 8 researchers, all focused on the monitors showing Norah's fight for survival. The child had transformed the chamber into a battlefield. Using the debris scattered throughout the space, she had created obstacles and barriers, channeling the Ravitha's movements into predictable patterns. Her makeshift weapon had drawn blood 3 more times, targeting the creature's legs and face with surprising precision. But the toll on Norah was evident. Her movements had slowed, exhaustion creeping into her limbs. Her face was pale, streaked with dirt and tears. Yet she refused to stop. Every time the Ravith approached, she responded with noise, movement, and violence. Her endurance levels are remarkable, one of the newly arrived researchers observed, reviewing the biometric data. She should have collapsed from exhaustion cycles ago. Kellen had spent the hours compiling everything he could find about human evolution. The picture that emerged was terrifying. Humans were persistence hunters, evolved to chase prey across vast distances until their targets literally died from exhaustion. Their bodies regulated temperature through water excretion, allowing them to continue physical activity long after other species would have overheated and shut down. Look at this. Kellen pulled up a video file from Earth's database. It showed humans running for hours across scorching terrain, following a 4-legged creature until it collapsed. They evolved to outlast everything on their planet. While other predators sprinted, humans jogged. While other species rested, humans kept coming. They're endurance predators. But she's a child, Mira protested. Surely she hasn't developed those capabilities yet. Human children begin developing these traits early. Their play involves running, chasing, and hunting games. By age 6, they can maintain physical activity for hours. Kellen felt sick as he said it. We didn't feed a helpless infant to the Ravith. We trapped a young predator in an enclosed space with another predator. On the monitor, the dynamic had shifted noticeably. The Ravith no longer charged with its previous confidence. It circled Norah warily, occasionally lunging but retreating quickly when she responded. The wounds on its legs had stiffened its gait. Blood loss, while not critical, had weakened it. Norah had claimed territory near the water dispenser that provided the Ravith with hydration. She had discovered it by watching where the creature drank, then positioned herself to control access. When the Ravith approached for water, she drove it back with screams and threatening gestures. She's denying it resources, Preth observed, his tone shifting from clinical to concerned. The child is employing tactical strategy. Human intelligence develops early, Kellen confirmed. They're problem solvers from infancy. Tool use, pattern recognition, tactical thinking. All survival traits from a hostile environment. The Ravith, increasingly desperate from thirst and confused by prey that acted like a predator, made another attack. This time Norah didn't dodge. She had positioned herself near one of her constructed barriers, and when the creature lunged, she rolled under its body and drove her metal shard upward into its softer underbelly. The Ravitha's roar shook the chamber. It thrashed wildly, catching Norah with a glancing blow from its tail that sent her flying into a wall. She hit hard, the impact audible through the monitors. For several heartbeats, she didn't move, and Kellen thought the worst had happened. Then Norah pushed herself up, gasping for air. Her left arm hung at an odd angle, probably fractured. Blood ran from a cut on her forehead. But she retrieved her weapon with her good hand and faced the Ravith again. Impossible, someone whispered. That impact should have killed her. Death world physiology, Kellen said grimly. Humans evolved dense bones and redundant systems. Their bodies are built to take damage and keep functioning. The Ravith was hurt worse than Norah. The stomach wound bled freely, and its movements had become sluggish. It stared at the small human, and for the first time in its life, the apex predator experienced genuine fear of its prey. Norah wasn't advancing on the creature. She maintained her position, weapon ready, making herself as loud and threatening as possible. She wasn't trying to kill anymore, Kellen realized. She was trying to establish dominance, to convince the predator that she wasn't worth the effort, that IT was a strategy born from a planet where survival meant understanding predator psychology, where humans had learned to coexist with creatures that could kill them by studying behavior and exploiting weakness. "Extract her now," Kellen demanded. "We've seen enough. The child has proven her resilience beyond any doubt. Continuing this serves no purpose except cruelty." Preth studied the monitors for a long moment, watching Norah sway on her feet, exhaustion and injury finally overwhelming her adrenaline. "Very well. Deploy the extraction team. But carefully. We have two dangerous predators in that chamber now." The extraction team entered in full armor, carrying shock weapons and protective equipment. They moved slowly, announcing their presence to avoid startling either the Ravith or Norah. The creature retreated to the far side of the chamber, watching them with wary eyes but not attacking. It had learned. Norah saw the armored figures approaching and tried to raise her weapon defensively. "Stay back." Her voice was hoarse from screaming, barely audible. "We're here to help," the team leader said through his suit speakers. "You're safe now. We're taking you to your parents." At the word parents, something broke in Norah's expression. The fierce survival mask cracked, and she was suddenly just a terrified 6-year-old child who wanted her mother and father. She dropped the metal shard and collapsed into the team leader's arms, sobbing uncontrollably as they carried her from the chamber. Norah looked back once at the Ravith. The creature watched her leave, its own wounds bleeding, its pride as an apex predator forever shattered by a human child who refused to be prey. Kellen watched them disappear down the corridor, then turned to Preth. "You need to understand what we've done here. We've announced to the galaxy that humans are not what they seem. We've revealed that Earth produces survivors who can fight back against the worst the universe offers. And what we've learned," Preth replied quietly, his earlier arrogance gone, "is that we know nothing about death worlds or the species they create." The medical bay transformed into chaos within minutes of Norah's arrival. Dr. Venn, the station's chief medical officer, worked quickly to stabilize the child while Kellen hovered nearby, unable to leave despite having no medical expertise. Norah drifted in and out of consciousness, her body finally allowing itself to shut down now that safety had been reached. Fractured ulna, 3 cracked ribs, severe bruising across her entire back, lacerations requiring sealing, and possible internal bleeding. Dr. Venn rattled off the injuries while his assistant worked. But her vitals are stabilizing faster than projected. Her healing factors are remarkable. Kellen had researched this too. Human bodies responded to injury with inflammatory responses and accelerated cellular repair. Minor wounds could heal completely in days. Broken bones mended themselves given time. They were built to survive damage. "The parents need to be informed," he said quietly to Dr. Venn's expression darkened. "Lieutenant David Reeves is out of surgery and conscious. His mate, Rebecca, remains critical but stable. I'm not looking forward to explaining this to him." The explanation came sooner than expected. David Reeves appeared in the doorway of the treatment room, supported by a medical assistant. The human male stood approximately 1.8 meters tall, with a muscular build of someone who worked in physical security. Despite his injuries and obvious pain, he moved with purpose toward his daughter. "Norah," his voice cracked. "What happened?" "They said there was an accident." Kellen stepped forward, his conscience demanding he face the consequences of his actions. "Mr. Reeves, I'm Dr. Kellen. There was no accident. Your daughter was placed in an enclosure with a dangerous predator as a feeding attempt. I was present and failed to prevent it." The silence that followed felt like a physical weight. David stared at the alien scientist, his expression cycling through disbelief, comprehension, and finally settling on a cold fury that made Kellen take an involuntary step backward. "You fed my 6-year-old daughter to a monster." David's voice was quiet, which somehow made it more terrifying than shouting would have been. "On purpose." The decision was made by Administrator Preth under emergency protocols. I protested but was overruled. "There is no excuse sufficient for what we did." Kellen met the human's eyes, refusing to look away from his justified anger. "Your daughter survived through remarkable courage and ability. She fought back and wounded the creature until we could extract her safely. David moved past Kellen to his daughter's bedside, taking her uninjured hand gently in his. Nora's eyes opened at his touch. "Dad, I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe now." He smoothed her hair back from her forehead, his movements tender despite the rage Kellen could see burning beneath the surface. "You're so brave. So incredibly brave." "It was a monster," Norah whispered. "It tried to eat me. I hit it with metal and made it go away. You did perfect, baby. You survived. That's all that matters." Over the next hour, more humans arrived. Other survivors from the crashed ship, including 2 off-duty soldiers who had been traveling with the colonists. Word of what happened spread through the human group like wildfire, and their collective anger created an atmosphere that had the station's alien staff nervous. Administrator Preth was summoned to the medical bay, accompanied by 2 security officers. He arrived to find himself surrounded by humans whose body language radiated hostility. David Reeves, still injured but refusing to sit down, stepped forward. "You're the one who gave the order." "I am Administrator Preth. I made a decision based on available information to prevent a greater catastrophe." Preth stood his ground, but Kellen noticed his secondary eyes tracking the humans warily. "I deeply regret the outcome." "You regret getting caught." One of the soldiers, a woman named Amy, interjected. "You regret that our girl didn't die quietly like you expected." "The Galactic Council will be informed," David said, his voice carrying military formality. "Charges will be filed. But right now, I want to understand why you thought any of this was acceptable." Preth hesitated, then gestured to Kellen. "Show them the classification data." Kellen pulled up the files on a portable display, showing the humans their own planet's assessment. Earth was categorized as Class 3, indicating a comfortable environment with minimal threats. This was incorrect. Your world is actually Class 2, a death world with extreme conditions and significant dangers. "We could have told you that," Amy said dryly. "Earth is hard. That's not news to us." "But it was to us," Kellen admitted. "We assumed humans were fragile because you lack natural armor or obvious weapons. We didn't understand that you evolved different survival strategies. Intelligence, endurance, adaptability, and aggression when threatened." David absorbed this information, his anger not diminishing, but becoming more focused. "So because you made assumptions, you threw my daughter to a monster. And when she survived by fighting back, you were surprised." "Yes," Kellen said simply. "We were catastrophically wrong about your species." Rebecca Reeves was brought in on a medical transport, conscious now and demanding to see her daughter. The reunion was emotional, with Norah crying and clinging to both parents while they held her carefully around her injuries. Kellen watched from a distance, feeling the weight of his guilt settle deeper into his conscience. That evening, Galactic Council representatives arrived via emergency transport. They interviewed everyone involved, reviewed the recordings of Norah's time in the chamber, and conducted private meetings with the human survivors. The humans demanded accountability, proper classification of their species, and assurances this would never happen again. The Ravith, meanwhile, had been treated for its injuries and returned to its enclosure. But something fundamental had changed in the creature. It no longer moved with predatory confidence. It remained in the far corner of its space, eating only when food was delivered directly to it, and showing signs of stress whenever researchers approached. "The creature is traumatized," Dr. Venn reported during one of the council meetings. "It experienced something contrary to its entire evolutionary history. It learned that prey can become predator, that size and strength don't guarantee victory, and that hunting carries risks it never understood." One of the council representatives, a being named Talia from the diplomatic corps, turned to Kellen. "Dr. Kellen, your research into human biology has been shared with the council. Your conclusion is that humans are inherently dangerous." "Not dangerous," Kellen corrected carefully. "Survivors. Earth made them tough because it had to. They're capable of remarkable violence when threatened, yes, but also remarkable compassion." Norah Reeves fought the Ravith with everything she had, but once she established dominance, she didn't try to kill it. She just wanted to live. "And now the galaxy knows," Talia said quietly, that humanity comes from a world that makes warriors out of children. The investigation consumed 3 weeks, during which the research station functioned under council oversight. Administrator Preth was formally arrested and transported to face charges of sapient rights violations. 2 other officials who had supported his decision faced similar charges. The Galactic Council moved swiftly to demonstrate that what happened to Norah Reeves was not acceptable under any circumstances. Kellen cooperated fully with investigators, providing all his research into human biology and evolution. His testimony proved crucial in helping the Council understand how catastrophic their misclassification of Earth had been. He spent long hours compiling data, cross-referencing human capabilities with other known species, and building a comprehensive profile of Death World survivors. The results were stunning. Humans possessed endurance that exceeded 98% of known species. Their healing rates placed them in the top tier of biological recovery. Their ability to function through pain and injury was remarkable. Most significantly, their intelligence allowed them to overcome physical limitations through tool use, strategy, and adaptation. They're not the strongest species, Kellen explained during one presentation to council observers. They're not the fastest or the most armored, but they're persistent, creative, and absolutely refusing to give up. These traits made them apex predators on a world filled with creatures that could easily kill them. David Reeves attended some of these sessions, listening to aliens discuss his species like fascinating specimens. Kellen noticed the human's discomfort and approached him afterward. I apologize if these discussions seem dehumanizing. We're trying to ensure this never happens again. I get it, David replied. You need to understand us, to protect us. But it's strange hearing people talk about humans like we're exotic animals. He paused. Norah asks about you sometimes. She wants to know if you're the nice alien who was sorry. Kellen felt something twist in his chest. I don't deserve her kindness. No, you don't. But she's 6. She doesn't understand everything that happened. She knows you're sorry, and for her, that matters. David studied the alien scientist. She also wants to see the creature again, the Ravith. Her therapist thinks it might help with closure, but I'm not sure. That could be arranged under controlled circumstances, Kellen said carefully. Though I'm surprised she would want to see it. She says she needs to know it's okay, that she didn't hurt it too bad. David shook his head. Even after everything, she's worried about the monster that tried to eat her. That's very human, Dr. Kellen. We're complicated that way. 3 days later, Kellen arranged the viewing. Norah stood with her parents in a secure observation room, her left arm in a cast covered with drawings from other human children. The Ravitha's enclosure stretched out below them, the massive creature visible in the corner. It's bigger than I remembered, Norah said quietly, her small hand gripping her father's tightly. You were very brave, Kellen told her. Braver than most adults would have been in that situation. Norah watched the creature for several minutes in silence. Then she asked, Is it sad? The question surprised everyone. Kellen considered it carefully, studying the Ravitha's body language. I think it's confused. It doesn't understand what happened between you. I didn't want to hurt it, Norah said. I just wanted it to leave me alone. The creature knows that now, Kellen replied gently. You taught it something important, that other beings deserve respect and space. As they watched, the Ravith raised its head and looked directly at the observation window. It couldn't possibly see through the reflective surface, but somehow it seemed to sense Norah's presence. For a long moment, predator and former prey regarded each other across the barrier of glass and distance. Then Norah did something that made Kellen's eyes widen. She placed her good hand flat against the window in what humans called a wave, a gesture of peaceful acknowledgement. The Ravith tilted its head, studying the small figure above, then slowly laid back down. Goodbye, monster, Norah whispered. I hope you feel better. Meanwhile, the Council's reclassification of humanity proceeded rapidly. Earth was officially designated Class 2 Death World, with detailed warnings about human capabilities distributed to all member species. The data included not just physical traits, but psychological ones. Human pack bonding behavior, their tendency to adopt and protect other species, their capacity for both extreme violence and extreme compassion. They're walking contradictions, one council member observed during a session Kellen attended. Capable of horrific cruelty, but also remarkable kindness. How do we integrate a species like that into galactic society? Carefully, another member replied, and with respect. We cannot afford another incident like this one. The council offered substantial reparations to the Reeves family and all the human survivors. They provided new colony accommodations on a planet specifically evaluated for human settlement, with gravity and atmospheric conditions matching Earth. Medical care, education, and support services were guaranteed for the next decade. David Reeves negotiated on behalf of the human group. We want assurances, documentation that humans are not prey, not expendable, not test subjects. We want it written into council law that what happened to Norah is recognized as a crime against sapient beings. The council agreed. The legislation that passed became known as the Reeves Protocol, establishing strict guidelines for interaction with newly contacted species and severe penalties for abuse of vulnerable individuals regardless of their perceived physical capabilities. Kellen received a formal reprimand for failing to more strenuously oppose Pretha's orders. But the council acknowledged his later efforts to protect Norah and educate others about humanity. He requested reassignment to human integration studies, wanting to help prevent future misunderstandings. That on his last day at the research station, Kellen visited the Reeves family in their temporary quarters. Norah was playing with the other children, her arms still in a cast, but her spirits notably improved. She ran over when she saw him, her face lighting up with a smile. "Dr. Kellen, look, my cast comes off next week." "That's wonderful news, Norah." Kellen crouched down to her level. "I wanted to say goodbye. I'm being assigned to a different position." "Will you help other aliens understand humans?" she asked with the straightforward insight of childhood. "Yes. I'm going to teach them about Earth and your people, so everyone knows how special humans are." Norah considered this, then hugged him carefully around the neck. "Thank you for being sorry, and for helping me." Kellen felt moisture in his eyes, an unexpected emotional response. "Thank you for being so brave and for teaching us all something important." As he left the station for the last time, Kellen carried with him the memory of a 6-year-old human child who faced down death and won, not through strength or size, but through the indomitable will to survive that Earth had bred into her species across millions of years of evolution. 6 months after the incident, Norah stood in the common area of New Haven Colony, watching ships descend through the atmosphere of their new home. The planet, designated Harmony 7 by the Council, but simply called Haven by the humans, offered Earth-like conditions with slightly lower gravity. The colony was growing rapidly as more human settlers arrived from Earth and other stations. Her arm had healed completely, leaving only a thin scar that she sometimes traced with her fingers when remembering that day. The nightmares had faded to occasional bad dreams, and her therapist said she was processing the trauma remarkably well. Human resilience, they called it. The ability to experience something terrible and still move forward. "Norah, come see the new playground," her friend Jack called from across the yard. The colony had just finished construction on a recreation area designed specifically for human children, with climbing structures and running spaces that would have seemed excessive to most alien species. She ran to join him, her body moving with the unconscious grace of a child who never thought about the mechanics of running. Behind her, Rebecca Reeves watched with a mixture of pride and lingering fear. The incident had changed their family, made them all more aware of how humans were perceived by the greater galaxy. David worked now as a security consultant for the Council, helping them understand human defensive capabilities and training alien security forces on how to interact with humans safely. His first-hand experience made him valuable, though he struggled sometimes with the anger he still carried about what had happened to his daughter. "She's thriving," Rebecca said to Dr. Venn, who had transferred to the colony as their primary physician. "Sometimes I forget how close we came to losing her." "That's healthy," Dr. Venn replied, his alien features arranged in what he hoped was a reassuring expression. "Children are remarkably resilient, especially human children. Norah experienced trauma, survived it, and is now building new memories. That's exactly what should happen. Across the galaxy, Kellen submitted his comprehensive study on human integration to the Galactic Council. The document, over 3,000 pages long, covered everything from human biology to psychology, cultural practices to historical development. It became required reading for all council officials and was distributed to every member species. The key sections focused on understanding human contradiction. They were fierce warriors when protecting their young but gentle caregivers. They could show mercy to enemies while being ruthless to threats. They pack bonded with other species, adopting animals and even aliens into their family groups with remarkable ease. Humans should not be feared, Kellen wrote in his conclusion, but they should be respected. They come from a world that taught them to be survivors, and they carry those lessons into every interaction. Underestimate them at your peril, but treat them with dignity and you will find them to be loyal allies and valuable friends. The Ravith had been moved to a specialized facility where traumatized predators received rehabilitation. Interestingly, it responded well to holographic images of humans, showing calm behavior rather than aggression or fear. The creature had learned a lesson that would carry for the rest of its life. Some prey fights back, and fighting back deserves respect. News of the incident spread through human colonies and back to Earth itself. Norah became somewhat famous, though her parents shielded her from most of the attention. The story was told and retold, sometimes with embellishments, becoming part of human culture in space. The girl who fought the monster and won. But Norah herself thought about it less and less as new experiences filled her days. She made friends, attended school, learned about the dozens of alien species that shared the galaxy with humanity. She was particularly fascinated by the Verulan people, asking her teacher endless questions about their biology and culture. "When I grow up," she announced one day at dinner, "I want to study aliens like Dr. Kellen studies humans." David and Rebecca exchanged glances overhead. Their daughter, who had every reason to fear aliens after what had been done to her, wanted to understand them instead. They reflected a very human response. To experience trauma and choose connection over hatred. 1 year after the incident, a package arrived at the Reeves household. Inside was a data crystal and a handwritten note from Dr. Kellen. The note was brief, for Norah, when she's ready to understand. The crystal contained the full footage from the observation room, every moment of her fight with the Ravith, along with Kellen's scientific analysis and commentary. But it also contained something else. Messages from aliens across the galaxy who had heard her story and wanted to thank her for teaching them about humanity. There were messages from Korthan children who had learned courage, for example. From Verulan scientists who had changed their research ethics because of what happened to her. From council diplomats who approached human negotiations with new respect because a 6-year-old girl had shown them what humans could do when pushed to their limits. Norah watched some of the footage with her parents, seeing herself from the outside for the first time. The small figure on the screen seemed so young and vulnerable, but also fierce and determined. She barely remembered being that frightened, though she remembered the feeling of refusing to give up. "Are you okay watching this?" Rebecca asked, ready to turn it off if needed. "I am okay," Norah replied. "It's like watching someone else. I remember it, but it feels far away now." At school, her teacher asked the class to write about what they wanted to be when they grew up. Norah wrote about being an alien ambassador, someone who helped humans and other species understand each other. She included a drawing of herself standing between a human and a Verulan, all three figures holding hands. The teacher, a human woman named Ms. Patterson, looked at the drawing and felt tears in her eyes. This child, who had experienced the worst of galactic misunderstanding, wanted to build bridges instead of walls. 5 years later, Norah gave her first public speech about the incident at a council youth conference. She was 11 now, taller and more confident, but still carrying the core of courage that had saved her life. She spoke calmly about fear, survival, and forgiveness. "What happened to me was wrong," she told the audience of young beings from dozens of species. "But being angry forever wouldn't help anyone. Instead, I want to make sure it never happens to anyone else. That means all of us learning about each other, respecting our differences, and understanding that whether you're from a death world or a paradise planet, everyone deserves safety and kindness. The speech was broadcast across the galaxy, viewed by billions. It sparked conversations in classrooms and council chambers, homes and military installations. The human girl who fought back became the human woman who reached out. Dr. Kellen attended the speech in person, sitting in the audience with tears streaming down his face. After it ended, Norah found him in the crowd and hugged him tightly, no longer the small child he had carried to that chamber, but still the same brave soul. "I'm proud of you," he told her. "You took something terrible and made it meaningful." "You helped," Norah replied. "You were honest about what happened and worked to fix it." That mattered. As the conference ended and attendees filed out, talking excitedly about the speech, Norah stood with her parents looking out at the diverse crowd of species mixing peacefully. Humans walked beside Verilyn, Corthin, and dozens of others, all part of the complex tapestry of galactic society. "You changed the galaxy," David told his daughter, his voice thick with emotion. "No, Nora directly. I survived. We all changed the galaxy together by learning from it." That night, back in their quarters, Norah looked up at the stars visible through their window. Somewhere out there, on a research station she would never return to, a creature called the Ravith lived out its days with new understanding. And across countless worlds, beings who once saw humans as weak now saw them as survivors. Proof that strength came in many forms. She was 11 years old, had survived a nightmare at 6, and had chosen to let that experience make her kinder rather than harder. That choice, made by a human child from a death world called Earth, rippled through the galaxy in ways big and small, changing how species saw each other and themselves. Norah smiled at the stars and whispered a promise to herself and to the universe. She would spend her life building bridges, teaching understanding, and proving that the best response to darkness was not to become dark yourself, but to carry light wherever you went. It was. After all, the most human thing she could do. Read Triclaude. Can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.